I'm posting this here because I have no other place to tell this story. No one will ever believe me, and every avenue I had to pursue this and try to get some kind of action taken or some kind of result has already been exhausted. I keep seeing threads and stories popping up every so often about weird sightings from cavers or about missing people and strange lights in small towns, usually in rural areas. And every time I read them, every single time, I can't help but think about what happened to me, and it makes me feel sick, knowing there isn't really much that I can do. I saw something underground in a cave of some kind. What I saw, I don't really know. There is not a word or name that I can put to it, at least not really. But there is definitely something living underneath us, and it's something that the government does not want you to know. This happened to me probably around 8 years ago or so. At the time, I used to do a lot of contract work for this company that handled geological surveys and the like, infrastructure assessments in rural areas, and land management, and a load of other stuff. It was a lot of hiking and hauling equipment up to remote locations and sleeping in shitty conditions. Lots of sleepless nights and a lot of manual labor. This kind of work brought me up to this small little place that was pretty remote and quite mountainous. It was remote enough that you could drive for quite a while without seeing any other place. I am not going to tell you exactly where it was, as I do not want to give away too much revealing information if possible, even though I know it will be unavoidable later on. I didn't really mind doing this kind of work because I am the busybody kind of sort. I love hiking. I will go caving as long as I have enough of a plan and a route mapped out. I like exploring places and have done some serious urban exploring during my time. Anyway, so once the work was finished, I had some downtime, and I was really good friends with this guy that I worked with. Let's call him F. F was a lot like me, but even more of a thrill seeker somehow, and was always looking for local places to get lost in. Anyway, so one day he comes and tells me about this cave system near a local village. It had apparently been partially mapped out, but that it was much bigger than people expected, so people would turn back before getting lost. There is a part that he left out that I did not find out about until I got out of that village and asked around myself. There were rumors about people going missing over the past year or so. Around this area, people would go out for walks and just never show back up. I think there was a known hunter who would stake out animals and clean them up and then bring them back to sell. Apparently, he went outside one night and just never came back. They never found a trace of his body. They sent out a small search and rescue group as that was all that they could manage, but they did not find him. They found trails that went near the cave, but no evidence that this hunter actually went inside. It would have been silly for him to do that, with the equipment that he was carrying and a lack of proper tools. Plus, he would be way too busy hunting, and it's not like he would gain anything. A lot of people brushed it off as campfire story BS, and that the hunter probably just moved on, started hunting and trading somewhere else. Anyway, so me and F turned up there one early morning, and the passage to get inside was really narrow. I had to really squeeze myself in, and I'm lucky because if I weighed even another couple of pounds, my fat ass was not getting in there. Thankfully, once she squeezed past that initial part, the cave system opened up into these passages that had a little bit more room to breathe. The provisional maps that we had from official data and from asking around did not even tell you half the story. These passages went much deeper than we initially thought that they would. The smell, once we started trudging through that place, let me tell you, it was absolutely vile. There was this gaseous kind of smell, and I can only describe it as rotten eggs, I guess. It was just really overwhelming. It made it really hard to pay attention and listen out for sounds. But once we got deeper in the cave, That rotten egg smell gave way to what I can only describe as some kind of spicy food. It was weird to say the least. The first smell is not uncommon for caving, at least in my experience anyway. The second smell is not something I've ever encountered before this time. The first smell, by the way, didn't just completely disappear. It was still there, lingering in the background. It just became overpowered by the other smell. Now, for just a two-man hobbyist team, we had a lot of gear. Expensive ass gear that we really didn't have any business bringing along with us. We obviously had headlamps and shit, but we brought along lights that we could actually set up to sit along the walls and light up a path for us on the way back. We were actually planning on marking our path, but when we were setting it up, I noticed that someone must have done that in the past. There were these, scratch marks going along the walls from the path that we were on. I did not see them at the entrance, so they must have either faded over time from a long time ago, or just never reached up there. It was just these deep gouge marks. They looked like something had pierced through pretty cleanly and been dragged along the wall, if that makes sense. If I am being honest, we probably went much deeper into this cave than we ever should have done. The terrain was uneven and would get really narrow in sections before opening up to wider sections. The ground in some sections had this thick mud that was almost swamp-like that your boots got caught in. It caught me off guard a couple of times. I did not mention it to F at the time, but it looked like there were some kind of impressions in the mud that had either been walked over again by someone else or kicked or smudged. I maybe could have imagined that though. The impressions were not from a boot or anything like that. It looked more like handprints, I guess I would say. Like someone had fallen over and caught themselves with their hands, but they were much too consistently spaced to be a one-time fall. And like I said, they were smudged and not super clear and disappeared after a short while. So I just brushed them off. I didn't think they were all that important. By this next point, we were well beyond anything that was ever mapped out. We actually came out to this kind of side chamber, and I don't really know how to describe what we found down there, other than a person that had been restrained. He was still alive. I have no idea how. When I saw him, I tried to ask for his name and what happened and how long he had been down here, etc., but he was just completely delirious. He just made sounds that sounded like he was clicking his tongue and googling. His eyes were rolled back into his head, and he was almost vibrating when he was making these sounds. He was very clearly way out of it. When I say we found him restrained, I don't mean he was tied up with cuffs or rope or anything like that. He was somehow embedded into the rock wall of the chamber, and I know that sounds like nonsense, but that is the only way I can put it. It was like someone had cut a big hole in the rock and shoved him through it, and he had gotten stuck around his midsection where he was way too wide to fit through. His arms were not fully visible, and they were tucked in behind him and also went into the rock wall. He was also completely naked, but we did not find any evidence of any clothes on the way down, so I don't know where they disappeared to or where he took them off. I thought it might be a situation like in the Dyatlov Pass, where they hallucinate, and maybe that's why he took his clothes off, but again, there was no sign of them. All he had was a red cap on his head, and on the floor were these tinted black glasses that had been cracked on one lens. Because he was actually inside the wall, I could not see any of his lower half or legs or anything. F was just completely freaking out and tried looking for a way to get around the back of him to see if he had any serious wounds or if there was any way to unwedge him, but he could not find a path. He thought that maybe he'd just gone crazy, lost his mind, and tried to climb through somewhere silly, but it just did not make sense to me. The skin on his midsection was also really strange. He had some kind of deep scar that was mostly a silver color and was hard to see without the right light, but the skin around that section was also a different hue from the rest of his body. It was turning this almost greyish stone colour, but with a hint of something else, a mossy kind of colour. We did not have the right tools to break him out, but damn did we try. Could not even make a dent in the surface of the rock with the axe that we had brought to help widen the passages, but even then it was silly. We had no clue about this section, or how stable it was. A wrong strike could have easily brought something down and killed the poor guy. It became very quickly very clear that this would be a case for professionals. I told F to hurry on outside to get help, and that I would stay here with the guy until he got back. He tried to argue with me, but I did not take no for an answer, and he ran off. I had a canteen with plenty of water inside of it, and tried to make this guy drink, but his reaction actually made me jump out of my skin. The second that I brought it up to his lips, his eyes stopped rolling back and were just staring at me. Seeing this, I stumbled backwards, and he was shooting me a death glare and started making louder noises, louder gurgling. Also this loud hissing sound that was oddly pitched, and it made my ears ring a little bit. It made them hurt, but that could have easily just been my tinnitus that I mistook it for. His eyes were bloodshot, but the veins were tinged this slightly green color, and it was so strange. I approached him again with the canteen and tried to talk him through it and explain who I was and that I was just trying to help him, etc. I thought he might just be really out of it and perceiving me as a threat instinctively. But he just kept thrashing, and when I tried to hold his mouth open, he took a bite out of my finger and left a deep mark. His teeth were sharp because it bled instantly, and he punctured pretty deeply. I just sat on the ground and waited, because that was all I could do. But he started getting louder and louder, and the sounds that he was making were really echoing through this section of the cave. I swore I heard little bits of rock crumbling and other impacts intermittently. This guy was so pale, and around his neck and jaw, they looked so swollen and were almost purple looking. I genuinely could not work out what happened to this guy. One thing I noticed when I tried to give him water is that he was really warm. On fire is how far I would go as to say. Obviously, I can't really give an accurate reading, but it felt hotter than any kind of fever I had ever felt before. His skin felt rough too. It felt like he had some sort of rash or eczema on his face that was making it more coarse. At one point, after being silent for a time, this guy just got really loud. He was almost shouting or screaming. I don't know where it came from. And I heard these impacts and other noises from further down the passage. And I know I should have stayed put, but I just got so freaked out that I started moving. I left a light and a mark so that I would be able to find my way back. F was just taking too long, and I was starting to feel really claustrophobic. At one point, when I was just straight up sprinting, I slipped and fell on my ass, and my hand went into something wet. I heard something make a cracking kind of sound, and I felt this thick, almost gooey substance on my hand, which made me freak out. I tried to wipe it on the rocks and walls, and was not even looking at it, because just the thought and sensation was making me feel sick. I knew that if I looked, I would throw up right then and there. Whatever this was, it smelled like the smell from earlier, but stronger. I must have gotten lost, because I ended up at this chamber that we had not crossed on the way here. Some of the markers that we left had basically just up and vanished, and so I had to wing it. I'm not sure what happened to them. We usually use this reflective tape that we just stick to the wall. It's tough stuff, and even just a hint of light makes it really visible, but I saw none of it on the way. I was thinking that maybe that idiot F ripped it off somehow on the way out, maybe without thinking, just on instinct. It's biodegradable, so you can just leave it and it's fine, but I don't know. Maybe he just forgot. Maybe he was just too panicked to think it through properly. This chamber that I came to, it was tall. taller than any of the others that we had passed by. My light could not even hit the ceiling, that is how tall it was. I could see these faint shapes in the dark, and at first, I figured they were stalagmites, but I quickly realized that they weren't. Because they weren't just up on the ceiling. These shapes were clinging to the walls and lying across the floor, and some of them were clustered together. I shone my light over one, and instinctively I turned it off and got down low and tried to stay quiet. After a minute or two had passed, and I realized I was okay, I turned my flashlight back on, but I dimmed the lumen output as low as it would go while still letting me see. These shapes that were clinging to the walls, the ground, and the ceiling. They were not human, but they were almost human, but different, if that makes sense. The closest one to me, the one clinging to the wall, it was scaly, I guess is the only way I can properly describe what I saw. The skin was rough and had those patterns on it like you would see on a bearded dragon underneath the skin. Not the exact same, but just to give you the gist, those dividing patterns. The heads were about as human as you could get, except with this rough, coarse skin. The color was a mixture of like browns and greens and those sorts of colors, but the head was almost shaped exactly like a human one. It had hands and legs and feet like a human, and I could tell that it was around average height. It was clinging to the wall and was bent slightly, curled up almost, but I could still tell that it was somewhere around my height, I think. I'm about 5'7". I wanted to run right there and then, but I felt frozen in place. I thought that if I moved too quickly, I might wake it up or something, I'm not sure. I flashed my light over another one. This one was standing upright, but leaning backwards against the wall. It was almost exactly the same as the last one, except for the face. The face did not have the green and brown color, or the weird texture. It had actual human skin, normal human skin, but it didn't fit. I don't know any other way to say it than that. This skin was over its head, but it was loose in certain places. The eyes looked too big for the skin. I don't know why it did not notice me. They both had their eyes open, but did not react to the light. The skin was also not flush with the rest of the body. This human skin, it just kind of stopped below the neck area. It did not taper off, and the color did not fade. It just suddenly was not human skin anymore. I'm sorry, I know this is a terrible explanation. The only other thing that I can remember before I got the hell out of there was that it was wearing a pair of boots. Just these brown hiking boots that looked really muddy and scuffed up. I turned off my flashlight and tried to creep out of there as quietly as I could. It took me a few loops and tries, but I eventually found some of the tape, but by that point, I was not even far away from the exit. When I finally made it outside, I almost crashed into F, who was on his way back. He told me that everyone straight up refused to come and help. He had to contact the local police, who would take a little while to get there, along with the professionals. F wanted to go back in, but I told him no. I didn't tell him why exactly, but I told him that there was something in there. F eventually relented and admitted the truth to me, and I lost my shit. I asked him how he could be so reckless, that we could have easily gotten lost in there, or injured and died, etc., and that if there was a precedent for people going missing near that cave, that it was stupid to take that risk. An officer eventually came and talked to us, practically interrogated us. They told us that they did not find a trace of anyone down there, and that we were lucky we were not being arrested for wasting police time. I told them that I would be happy to go with them as a guide, and that I'm sure that they were mistaken, but he just snapped at me. He told me that they were done, and that the case was closed, that I probably just made up someone down there, or was high on something. He was really forceful in what he was saying, and did not give me an inch to talk back. And with that he left. None of the locals had anything to say to us. They damn near avoided us. They damn near all went back into hiding once we started walking back. You know, it's strange because I never heard any vehicles passing through. We stayed there the whole time and never got wind of any search and rescue officers or of a police or anything swinging by. Just this one random officer who showed up and disappeared on foot. I did not even see a cruiser or anything nearby. F and I stayed in the area another week or so. Some random people swung by at some point, I can't remember when. They were dressed up like mountaineers and had tons of gear on them. They were asking around. I obviously did not catch everything that they were saying, but they were very interested in local cave systems. Adamant on it, in fact. They weren't just asking generally for things to do or explore in the area. They were fixated on a cave in this specific area. Locals were obviously tight-lipped after our fiasco, and they ended up chatting to us. Something about them just rubbed me the wrong way. They didn't seem much like cavers. They didn't even know the half of it, and man, they were a nosy bunch. They wanted to know every single last detail, and it almost seemed like they were prying for something. I did not fully realize it at the time, of course, and I let slip about the one that we went into. Man, their eyes lit up when we said this. I eventually relented and told them where it was, but just warned them to be careful. I told them that we found someone injured down there, but that the police did not believe me. They damn near sprinted away at that point. They thanked us for our time, real cordial-like. I have never met a hiker or a caver who spoke like them. They seemed almost too, I don't know, eloquent maybe. Either way, that was basically it. We left soon after that. It just completely baffles me. Did I hallucinate something down there? It just seems so odd that the police were so quick to dismiss me, especially when I was so willing to cooperate and even guide a search and rescue team down there. I was more than happy to be in the lead and take that risk just to save that guy. It just never sat right with me, especially since the locals seemed to know more than they were letting on. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. I want to tell you about what happened to me. On the first day, I was going out with two friends on a camping trip. We were aiming to do a little bit of bow hunting. It's actually illegal in the UK, but whatever. And we also wanted to do a bit of tracking. It was supposed to last for 3 days. The land is a very dense woodland, with lots of groves of yew and beech, and parts are very swampy and water-filled. One of my friends is called Tom. He's only been camping a couple of times like myself. He is not too experienced and wants to learn more. My other friend is called Richard. He is a very experienced hunter who's gone on hunts with tribes in Africa. He is very good in the outdoors. He does not take much with him when he goes camping, and he goes for weeks at a time, all on his own. We were aiming to learn from him. He also took a replica Anglo-Saxon sword with him because he has been in this location before and he met feral dogs. We get a camp set up, tarps. We strung and leave our food out. We all go on a walk. Richard is showing us edible plants and medicinal herbs. We come back to find Tom's shitty hiking bag ripped to pieces and the food scattered everywhere. Richard took a small satchel with him when we went on the walk. He does not take a lot, and my bag was untouched. We assume it's a fox or a feral dog that did it. Tom is annoyed, but we have lots of food, and his tarp and sleeping bag thankfully were not destroyed. We cook some food on our fire and try to get to sleep when we hear a rustling sound around our camp. Richard just orders us to put some more wood on the fire, and we do, and the rustling can be heard all throughout the night. I don't get to sleep that night. Everyone else does though. I finally get a few hours of sleep in the morning, but I am still pretty tired. Richard had been up the earliest, and he is smoking tobacco and looking off into the woods. Tom is still asleep. It's around 10 in the morning at this point, and Richard is talking to me in a low voice. He says, "Listen, I found a dead fox a few feet outside of camp when I woke up. It had been torn to shreds. I don't know what did it, but we will need a lot more wood tonight. Also, don't tell Tom." I agree, and then I wake Tom up, and all three of us go hunting and snaring. Richard has a bow, and Tom has an air rifle. Richard shoots a few rabbits, and Tom gets 2 squirrels, even though he has never been hunting before. We set a few snares up, and we will go back to them at dusk. Squirrels often have fleas on them, so Richard climbs up a tree and hangs it from a branch, around 10 feet off the ground, to make sure all the fleas go away. We will collect that at dusk. We spend the rest of the time gathering wood, smoking, and preparing our rabbits for our meal later. They are hanging above the fire in the smoke to stop the flies from eating them. It's getting dark, and Tom and Richard gather their kills. I stay at camp, and I keep hearing rustling and growling coming from a bush near our camp. I get the fire going and keep my axe close by. They come back, and Tom is obviously shaken up. He says the squirrel that he hung up was completely torn off the trees. Only the legs were left behind. The rabbits that we caught in the snares had not been eaten, but some creature left huge claw marks on the bodies. They just played with it and left it to die. Richard starts cooking the rabbits that he shot earlier, and the growls and the rustles keep getting closer. Then it starts howling. This isn't any fox or a feral dog. It's like a damn banshee. Imagine the screams of a woman mixed with a coyote howl, and that is what it sounds like. Richard decided he had just had enough, and he shoots an arrow into the bush. A large, black creature just runs out. We only see it from behind, but it's got long arms that hang from its side and a very hunched back. With the back hunched over, it is still like 8 feet tall. It has dark, matted fur, and the smell is disgusting. It smells of burning hair and rotting meat. Richard and I start making traps. We make Viet Cong style foot traps all along the camp, and Richard smears mud all over his face and jumps up high in a tree with his bow in hand and sword in his belt. He is a crazy guy. Tom and I stick by the fire and hold our weapons close by. I just have a long sharpened stick and an axe. He has an air rifle and a knife. Our weapons would not do much. Richard's bow is enough to kill a deer or an unarmed person, and so we hope that it could do enough damage just to keep it away. We keep hearing howling in the woods, and the howling gets closer and closer. We finally see it silhouetted against the ridge, although it's very hard to see. Tom and I put a lot of wood on the fire, and I am just shitting myself at this point. Tom is worse. He is very pale and shivering, even though it's quite a warm night. The creature goes past the bush. That's around 15 feet away from the camp. It goes past the tree that Richard is standing in, and Richard starts shooting at it from the tree. The animal runs forward to get away from the arrows, but it gets closer to the fire. I can see it closer now. It's got a canine-like face, but something about it is strangely human. I throw down my spear and grab a burning stick out of the fire and wave it around. Tom is doing the same thing as me, and Richard is still shooting arrows into its back. There is at least 5 arrows in its back, and it is not even flinching. It did not make so much as a sound. Richard just screams and runs up with a sword and keeps on hacking and slashing. The creature keeps on screaming, and the smell of its blood is very acrid. Richard gets a large gash on his cheek and gets scratched by the creature, and it runs off into the forest. We see the creature's arm lying on the ground, and Richard's sword is covered with black blood. It reminds me of Lord of the Rings. It felt like 30 minutes had gone by, maximum, but time has gone by incredibly fast. It's actually 3 in the morning. We put more wood on the fire, and Richard stays by and cleans his sword. We hear screaming all night long, and trees crashing and falling, and then one final scream that stops. As the sun rises up, we clear up our traps, burn the arm of the creature, and gather our shit, and then we get the hell out of there. Tom has nightmares about that encounter for weeks, and he has not gone camping since. I take a machete with me whenever I go on overnighters, and I always have a large, roaring fire to keep things away. Richard kept on hunting and camping, and he started getting interested into skinwalkers and paranormal stuff, and he introduced me to it too. We still go camping sometimes, and he is always very vigilant. Around this time, he also converted to Anglo-Saxon heathenism, which I didn't really understand all that much, but he started going back to that same forest and tried to appease the land whites of the area, is what he told me. He tells me that he clears evil away from the forest, although he doesn't tell me exactly what he does or how he does it. That's my story. It sounds implausible, I know, but it truly happened to me, and I am not going to that place ever again. That scar of Richard's got infected, but eventually healed, if you wanted to know.